Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a quick winter storm which is going to be moving throughout parts of the northern plains, and we're also going to be talking about the chance for some potential severe storms for parts of the Midwest and then back through the lower Great Lakes and parts of the Ohio Valley as well. This could be a multi-day severe weather event or heavy rain event for these areas, so I will be tracking this closely, especially as we get closer to the event. That's when we're going to get a lot more details into what we should be expecting from these severe storms in that area. We also have warmer temperatures out ahead of the storm, chillier temperatures on the other side of the Rockies, and we're also going to be talking about that in a little bit in this video. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and you can tell there's really not a lot going on. We have some red flag warnings for parts of Oklahoma, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa, as well as some freeze watches in effect for parts of South Carolina and Georgia. We also have, I believe those are some frost advisories and some freeze warnings in effect for northwestern California, but again, other than that, we don't have a lot of watches or warnings currently ongoing. Your high temperature yesterday was 13 miles east-southeast of Mecca, California, where they got to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Your low temperature for the entire continental United States was in Mount Washington, New Hampshire. They got to negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit. That's at about 5,000 to 6,000 feet up in elevation, so that's of course why they were so much colder than the surrounding areas. And the highest precipitation or rainfall report was 7 miles northwest of Honeydew, California, where they got to 4.69 inches of rainfall or melted precipitation. That's in some of the higher elevations and slightly elevated areas of northwestern California. So getting a bit of lift in the atmosphere did help them get quite a bit more rain than some of the surrounding areas. And the highest snowfall report was also in California. We had a tie of 7.2 inches in these two spots, 2 miles south of Dinsmore, California. They got 7.2 inches, and 5 miles southeast of Dinsmore, California, they got 7.2 inches. That's also in northwestern California in some of the higher elevations where they did get a quite hefty amount of snowfall yesterday. So here's where the most snowfall actually falls in March. So this is where March is your snowiest month out of the year. The source is from the NCDC, which is basically the climate records research center, and I believe they do collect all these records and all the snow data, and they basically compile it, and there is this great map which shows you for each individual month which reporting stations actually have their snowiest month in that particular month. And I picked up the one for March, and you can tell that the area that's going to be seeing snow from this winter storm is the same area that March is typically their snowiest month. You can see it's really over parts of the western plains, I guess you could say. So for parts of the Great Plains in western Kansas, western Nebraska, much of South Dakota, a little bit of North Dakota, and then back through the eastern side of the Rockies, that's where your most snowfall actually falls in the month of March. And you might be asking why that is, because most areas see their heaviest or the most snowfall in January or February, especially if you live anywhere within this region right here. Your most snowfall is typically going to be in, again, February or January, and that's because the jet stream is colder and further south during that time period in January and February. But when the jet stream pulls away back further to the north, and I'll draw the March jet stream typically in the blue right here. So this is typically what your jet stream looks like in March, and it's actually sometimes a little bit further north of there. In January and February, it's too far to the south for these areas in the northern plains to get hit by any of the storms. But as you get into March and April, still cold enough for snow, but now you actually have a jet stream that's a little bit further north, and that's what's allowing some of these areas to get a lot of snowfall in March. And even some of these areas average their snowiest month in April. In South Dakota, Wyoming, a little bit of Colorado as well, they average their most snowiest month in April, which kind of sounds a little bit ridiculous, but when you think about it, it does make a lot of sense. When you think about the pattern, they really don't see any precipitation during the winter months. It's when you get into spring when they get a lot of their snowfall. Now let's start talking about this particular storm. It's going to be a quick mover, and it will have some quite isolated heavy snowfall, but exactly where that sets up is going to be a big question, and we still have a lot of uncertainty with the models on how this is actually going to play out. So this would be by Wednesday morning. We're dealing with snow back through Wyoming. a mix of precipitation into parts of South Dakota and Nebraska, and then it starts to turn over to more of a moderate to heavy snowfall in most of these areas through Wyoming and South Dakota there. We have by Wednesday morning, March 10th, we're dealing with some of that snow. A little bit further to the west of the South Dakota-Nebraska border is where you have most of that heavy snowfall. And that's going to transition further to the east. Now, we really have no cold air with the system, so we're only using whatever cold air is already there, and it's actually going to be closer to 10 to 15 degrees above average while it's snowing for these areas in South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana. So even though it's warmer than normal, your average is still cold enough that you'll be able to see snowfall in these areas. If you're looking at where the 32-degree line is, you have to go all the way north of the Canadian border, or you have to go into the higher elevations to actually get some of your 32-degree plus temperatures. You have to go north of this line or west of this line to be below 32 degrees, and you can see much of the snowfall is actually occurring above 32 degrees, where it's going to be 33, 34, 35 degrees. So it will be a heavy, wet snowfall, and that might lead to some issues if and when you're shoveling that snowfall. This would be by Wednesday night into Thursday morning. You can see that if we shift this over to the Great Lakes, you have some of that heavier rainfall back through Wisconsin and northern Michigan, but we do have some lighter to moderate snowfall according to the European. The European is the least aggressive of all the models. We're going to show you the GFS model in just a little bit, which has a lot more snowfall and is a lot more robust. We can see some of that lighter to moderate snowfall by Thursday early in the morning. We're dealing with some of that heavier moderate snowfall through northwesternmost Wisconsin, northeastern Minnesota, and then it really heads out of here. Some rain or snow showers on the back end of this for Thursday in the later morning, and other than that, it would pretty much be all said and done with by that point, and we're dealing with a general 1 to 3 inch accumulation if that were to be the case. Now, the GFS is a lot different, and even though we're only about 3 to 4 days out, there's still so much that can change, especially with how undecided most of these models are, and we're going to have a couple more updates on this storm for you guys in the upcoming days. You can see that we have your low pressure down here in Kansas and Nebraska. We have some of your snow and rain showers further to the north up here. You can see that your cold air is a little bit further south on the GFS model. So we do have some cold air, although again, it is very, very unimpressive. We really don't have too much in the way of chilly or cold air that would typically provide a snowstorm. Although it is still early enough in spring that your average temperatures are still cold enough that even if it is a little bit above normal, you're still going to be seeing some snowfall in these areas. So that's still the main reason. You don't have any real cold air, any Arctic high pressure. You just have whatever cold air is still left over from the previous events. You can see that this system is going to continue to head further to the north and to the east. The Storm Prediction Center, which we'll talk about in a little bit, actually has a general risk of thunderstorms on Wednesday for some potential thunderstorm activity over Iowa and some of the surrounding areas. So we will have to watch out for that, and I will be discussing that later on in the video, and we'll likely have an individual upload closer to this event just about those thunderstorms, depending on how severe they do look to be. And then as we go through Wednesday in the early afternoon, getting through the evening hours, we're dealing with a wider band of snow back covering much of the state of South Dakota into central Minnesota, with potentially an ice or sleet zone, which could be about 10 to 25 miles wide, right in between the rain and the snow. And then you can see that by Wednesday night into Thursday morning, we're dealing with still lighter, moderate snowfall, and then through Thursday early in the morning, we're dealing with still some tapering off snowfall. And by the way, these are still some thunderstorms that are still going on for some of these areas back through Missouri and Illinois, if the GFS is correct. And I'll show you this in a little bit in a couple upcoming frames here. But this band of rain does end up just sitting over this area, and unfortunately, we could be dealing with some issues if that were to be the case. Now, here's what these snowfall totals look like. Here's what the European model is showing, and you can see how unimpressive these snow totals are, under an inch to maybe 2 inches in most of these areas, and then on either side of the snowstorm back through into Lake Superior and some of the surrounding areas, as well as areas near western South Dakota and northern Wyoming. That's where your snow totals get a little bit more impressive, 1 to 3 inches. A few areas in South Dakota and Wyoming getting closer to 10 inches of snowfall, mainly in slightly elevated areas, but other than that, if you live in between those two areas, really not looking like too big of a deal. But then you look at the GFS model, and it's a whole different story. And I'll actually go back one frame just to compare this. You can see that the European is a little bit further north, the GFS is further south, and you can definitely tell that the GFS has a lot more snowfall over a wider area. So you can see that we have a band of 4 to 6 inches of snowfall that spans eastern South Dakota through central Minnesota and then back through northern Wisconsin. You can see this little 8-inch marker right here on the European model. That same area had under an inch of snowfall. So you can see how much deviance there is within the models and how much they do change. And that's why we just have to keep on monitoring them, and I'll keep you updated if we do get any changes. Not too much has changed if you live back through Wyoming and western South Dakota. Still looks like a general 6 to 10 inch, maybe a few pockets of 12 to 18 inch event for those areas, and not a lot changed back here. The real uncertainty is what happens ahead of there into South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. I was hoping that they would kind of agree a little bit more yesterday as the new models came in, but we just found that really they didn't agree. They still had the same ideas, and they really didn't change at all. So we really are at the same exact place that we were at yesterday. Not a lot has changed, and we really don't have any new information on any of the models updating. So we really need to wait for probably another couple model cycles to get any good ideas of what may happen. Here's our chances of seeing 2 to 3 inches of snowfall, and you can see the Weather Prediction Center is taking more of what the GFS is showing, or actually the European is showing with a more of a northern track. You can see that you have a 10 to 30% chance right back through here, and I think they could push this a little bit further south, and we're really going to have to see, does the European adapt to the GFS, or does the GFS adapt to the European model? And I think once those two models agree, we're going to have a decent idea, or a fairly good idea, of what may happen. Now, here's the thunderstorm risk on the day 3 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. They're not expecting any severe thunderstorms just yet, but they have a general risk of thunderstorms back through parts of Iowa, a little bit of Minnesota, even back through Nebraska, Kansas, and northern Missouri there. And that's your general thunderstorm risk. So that's a 1 out of 6 on the risk scale. It's not a big deal just yet, but when they put it out on the day 3 outlook, that means that they're fairly certain that you're going to see some sort of severe thunderstorm activity, and they might even upgrade that to a marginal or a slight risk of severe weather. So we do want to watch out for that. And then looking at the loop of the GFS here, watch that red circled area and see how over the next about 5 to 7 days, there really is constant rainfall and thunderstorm activity throughout those areas, and that looks like, if we were just going off what the GFS is showing, and of course other models have slightly different solutions, if we're going off what the GFS is showing, we have maybe a slight risk for multiple days in a row for some of these areas. They might even put up an enhanced risk if some of those thunderstorms do play out how the GFS is showing. But of course, we're 5 to 7 days out plus over those areas, so we're still a lot of ways to go. We still have a lot of time before that does happen, but I did want to show it to you guys because there is that threat, of course, and there are most models and a lot of models actually picking up on some sort of idea that you'll see some sort of prolonged thunderstorm activity throughout those areas. We're going to be keeping track of that, and we'll definitely have some thunderstorm updates if that were to be the case. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.